if there are more gun owners in your constituency than maybe you realized previously, then that as a politician, you may change the way that you look at the issue, right? I mean, I guess that's sort of the idea there, right?
Well, it should be. I mean, now you've got to deal with it, ideally, at least on a policy basis, a true policy basis. Is it really a social ill? Is it something there, if you legislate on, it's going to harm members of your own constituency and not just those who would not necessarily vote for you? Ideally, it should help to spur politicians in that direction, and maybe it will. We'll see how well that's digested as the changes in the nature of firearms owners becomes more widely accepted, and the fact that it doesn't look the way now that it did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Another implication of this, of course, is that if you're understanding firearms ownership, one of the assumptions for years, at least in certain circles, was that the ranks of gun owners have been shrinking slowly but steadily over the last 30 years or so.
Yeah.
That may not be true. It looks as if, polling depends, the General Social Survey, for instance, finds, I think, that about 20% of Americans, at least it claims, 20% of Americans own guns, about 30% live in a gun-owning household. That's about the lowest end survey you'll find. But the General Social Survey is also conducted by going door to door, knocking on doors and having a stranger say, do you engage in a politically fraught and sometimes socially frowned upon activity? I mean, if someone knocks on your door and says, hey, are you a heroin user? Whether or not you are, you're probably going to say no. And you're getting that same phenomenon, I would think, in many cases on these surveys. So it probably is not safe to assume that there's any handle at all on how prevalent gun ownership is, let alone that it's necessarily a shrinking phenomenon in the country, especially after, 5 years of surging gun sales.
Yeah. And to the credit of these researchers, I think they did seem to acknowledge multiple parts of what you were just talking about there, and Bond herself said there's probably a need to change the way that researchers actually approach studying this issue. She told me, quote, "This is one of the studies that should hit researchers. Maybe we need to start adjusting the way we're asking questions. We can't always put it on participants to be 100% honest all the time if we haven't created environments in which they feel comfortable doing that, if we haven't interacted with communities in a way that makes us trustworthy. My hope for this piece is that it nudges researchers to start thinking about how they can engage with folks on firearms to help advance research and also give back to the community that we're studying."